Good afternoon, everyone. Reed here. We're going to have a very interesting discussion today on the hippocampus. Yep, hippocampus. You know, the hippocampus is one of those parts of the brain that's responsible for so much, but it never gives as much attention. The hippocampus doesn't get as much attention as the frontal lobe or the prefrontal cortex, or or the cerebellum. But it's responsible for so many things. Well, not a lot of things, but a handful of things that are very important for you, right? So I think the hippocampus is it's the beginning of the entry point into the brain network, right? So the hippocampus is for memory, right? The hippocampus is the part of the brain that when you get all of this sensory experiences, when it integrates the sensory experiences, it has to put the information into the network first. And after the pieces are in the network first, like blocks, then they go to the next processing station. And the next processing station puts these blocks together to make a whole, right? So the hippocampus is primarily for memory and learning, right? And it's also for direction, you know. So there's a type of memory that the hippocampus has. It's called declarative memory. I mean, the hippocampus only remembers the facts, the objects. Declarative memory, the table, the chair, the bottle, you know, the phone. These are discrete objects, and it's a declarative process. So the hippocampus remember the declarative memory, and then more like map finding. Let's say if you were in a Walmart you've never been before, you'll still be able to find the products, right? So if you've ever been in a huge building, what huge 20,000 square foot building you're going to go in for the first time and magically know where everything's at simply because you've never been in that building before? Think about this when we go to Walmart out of town. You know exactly where everything's at. Why? Hippocampus. And even though you're in the maze, going through it in a maze, you still have some higher viewpoint where you can sort of see the map. And I wonder if that viewpoint right there is that hippocampus able to allow you to look at the Walmart you're walking in from another perspective. Um, and the hippocampus is very important in mental conditions, because if your brain isn't taking in new information, then would your brain be on a read only status where it's just observing things but not taking in anything, not recording anything? And if your brain isn't recording the information around your environment, then how are you going to come to a how are you going to render that reality and come to a conclusion, right? If your brain isn't adding any information from the environment you're in. This what happens when people get out of phase with people or groups or things and things like that, is that the information set in their brain is different from the people around them. And you're going to learn how narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths take advantage of this vulnerability right here. It seems as if these sick people really understand how these intricate parts of the brain work. So let's look into the hippocampus for now. So let's see here. First, let me just give you a diagram of what I'm talking about here. Okay, hippocampus. It's this structure here. Look how specific it is. Amygdala. Right. Look at the thalamus right here. Right. Okay. Look, here's the hippocampus right here. I'm all these. Here's the hippocampus right here. These are other structures consistent with like parts of the basal ganglia and things like that. No, there's the thalamus and things like that. Okay, the limbic system, that mesolimbic pathway, I believe, the hippocampus, right here is memory. For short-term memory, learning, and spatial memory. Remember I said spatial memory walking around Walmart? It's the part of your brain with a big job. It helps you learn and memory. It converts short-term memories into long-term memories. Well, the hippocampus actually stores the bits of information first, and then you want to remove it to a long-term memory. This is like for the public. Here. Learning, short-term memory, visual, spatial memory, walking around Walmart, verbal memory, right? Right. Remember the right words to say. Patients with hippocampal damage, usually they have, may say inappropriate things or may say things that you don't agree with. Here's the declarative memory, just the facts, right? This is a bottle, it's a plastic bottle. See? This is not a refreshing beverage. It's a plastic bottle, not a refreshing beverage. So the hippocampus, remember, a plastic bottle, not a refreshing beverage. How does it work? The hippocampus works closely with other areas of your brain that needs the information that your hippocampus creates and stores. Now look at this. Your hippocampus and your amygdala work together. Remember PTSD and all the other problems and things like that? Remember you start to think about things that scare you and you start to activate your amygdala, and now you start to feeling overwhelmed, depressed, overwhelmed, and burdened and things like that. That's just that direct connection between this hippocampus and the amygdala. And that the amygdala, it's this part of your brain that helps protect you from the potential dangers in the environment. So it's always looking out there, interpreting things in terms of harm. And that's connected directly to your hippocampus. So you remember exactly what they did to you, right? You remember everything that they did to you. This association, although it's helpful for survival, may be detrimental at some point in the past. Because how do you detach yourself from the memories that bring up all the trauma and all the pain? Instead of amygdala, direct connection to the hippocampus. And the thing is that we want to dial that amygdala down. We want to know the receptors in the amygdala so we know the medications that can impact it. Because if this amygdala is overactive, then the person may have too much trauma, too much anxiety, restlessness. It may get to a point where the hippocampus cannot encode any more information because this amygdala is going off. So they work together to connect memories to emotions, right? And generate an emotional response. The hippocampus is part of your limbic system, which is connected to the hypothalamus, and the amygdala. Say that limbic system, right? Fight or flight here. Okay. I like this because this is written in everyday language. I think it gives you the same amount of content as the textbook. Where is the hippocampus located? The hippocampi in your brain. Okay. One on the left side and one on the right side. We saw. Let's see here. What does it look like? It looks like a seahorse. It's the function. The hippocampus is part of a larger group of structures called the hippocampal formation. The structures within hippocampus works together to complete cognitive functions related to memory and learning. And then here are all the different parts. But even after all these years reading this, I have to read this every time. It's like I'm reading it for the first time, even though I know the names, There's something about these deep subnuclei within the brain that is difficult for me to attach in a long-term memory. I got to have to read them over and over again. So here, I don't think I need to go into any detail. Dentate gyrus, spatial memory, hippocampal prampas, form memories, then organize and store the memories. All right. Whatever this is, collects the information from the hippocampus to send message to the other part of the brain to help your memory retrieval. Entorhinal cortex is a pathway for information to get to and from the hippocampus. Here we are right here. All right, the parts of the hippocampus. What happened if the hippocampus is damaged? Look at all of these. So in this setting, we see it in behavioral health. We see it more in the form of schizophrenia and dementia, but then we also see it a lot in definitely Alzheimer's dementia, right? Right, because it's memory, right? Also, in patients with post-traumatic stress disorder, remember that amygdala firing off every time there's a perceived threat. It causes impairment in hippocampal functioning. And what happens with patients with chronic emotional, psychological, physical abuse? Memory problems, right? Difficulty remembering things. Um, you know, for narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths, this is a target. They increase the anxiety, the discomfort, the drama, the trauma, and everything. And what does it do? It stops you from learning, right? And if you can't learn, then how are you ever going to get out of the situation? I mean, think about that. You have idiots targeting you behind your back and they're hiding and acting like they're not doing what everybody see they're doing. And this causes so much and this discordance, this you not your the psychopaths change things behind your back. So when you enter a reality, you don't know what you're headed into. And so you have everything in your brain that you're forming reality with, but it may not match the surrounding because the psychopaths and sociopaths change the reality around you. So they create emotional, psychological distress by the cognitive dissonance when you enter an environment that they've changed and intentionally changed but didn't tell you about it. You know, um, so this hippocampus is very important in protecting at all cost, because if these idiot psychopaths or sociopaths injure you psychologically to the point where you can no longer learn, then I'm not sure how you're going to defend yourself against these people. So let's look at Alzheimer's disease and these other ones also. What is the common symptoms in the hippocampus conditions? Okay, memory loss, mood changes, seizures. You may have trouble holding a conversation, attention, concentration, making decisions, indecisiveness, following direction. Yeah, these things. Okay. Okay, so this is the hippocampus. So let me look at the networks in the hippocampus and see if we can try to drill down to the networks in here, and we'll see what the receptors are. And once we understand what the receptors are, then we can sort of start to look at our medications, and so we can see um, how we can intervene here. So let me go here. Go Google here. Okay. Um, okay. Explain the network and receptors located in the hippocampus. Okay. 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 All right. So yeah, it gave me a really interesting organization. Okay, so we're going to look at the major categories, but not all the individual receptors themselves are very difficult to remember. So it's been hard for me to put those and remember. So I have to keep going back. The hippocampus contains distinct neuronal networks that process and transfer information, right? Primarily through the classic trisynaptic circuit. Oh, the trisynaptic circuit. Its functions are enabled by a wide variety of neurotransmitters, including glutamate and GABA being the primary excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters. Remember excitatory GABA, excitatory glutamate, inhibitory GABA, yin, yang. People who have who's deconditioned, tired, exhausted, fatigued simply have an excessive amount of glutaminergic activity, and you want to balance that out with GABA. Okay, here, the hippocampal network, trisynaptic circuits. The trisynaptic circuit is the primary informational pathway through the hippocampus. Okay. The trisynaptic circuit is the primary information pathway through the hippocampus, involving three major stages of synaptic connection. So we have this one, we have that one, we have that one, we have that one. That's all, folks. Okay, so the hippocampus worked by the trisynaptic receptor, trisynaptic circuit to enter the information in there. Okay, minor pathways. Okay, while the trisynaptic circuit describes the primary excitatory flow, other pathways and modulatory inputs contribute to the hippocampus function. I think this is still that direct pathway. Is it the, I don't know if it's now I know we went through the direct pathway from the cortex down to the striatum. We're over here in this area. I wonder if that's the same thing. Okay, CA2 involvement, you have to remember that. Okay, cholinergic neurons from the basal forebrain, including the medial septal, heavily innervate the hippocampus, regulating networks and oscillations like the theta rhythms. I think this has more to do. Remember in Parkinson's, dementia, you remember why anticholinergic medications like acetylcholine, Aricept, which is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor, the reason why it may improve cognitive function is because it may block these cholinergic receptors. So I wonder if that's the receptor that's responsible for the diminishing serum and seeing and targeting these cholinergic receptors. Okay, now we have GABAergic interneurons, and so various type of GABA releasing interneurons are distributed throughout the hippocampus. They provide powerful local inhibitory control, regulating excitability and fine-tuning networks and networks dynamics and oscillations. So we have GABA receptors there. Okay, so here, this hippocampal networks, this trisynaptic network here, these small ganglia here. The minor pathways are these, this direct, I don't know if it's the same direct pathway, cholinergic GABA. Okay. Now the receptors, glutamate receptors on the hippocampus. Okay. GABA receptors. Oh, neuromodulatory receptors. Here we have serotonin receptors. We have cholinergic receptors, dopamine and opiate receptors. And as you can see, we've gone through many of these receptors. We've gone through the dopamine receptors. We've gone through GABA, glutamate, serotonergic receptors. And as you can see, when we go through these dopamine, these networks, the same receptors pop up all the time, and you're going to notice it. GABA, glutamate, GABA, it's going to have to be there, right? Then next is dopamine, right? Then next is cholinergic neurons. Then next is serotonergic, and then like histaminergic. The same combination of receptors on all of these very important pathways. Here, okay. Now, let me see this. To do this, okay. Let me look at some of the things that affect the hippocampus. Let's do this. So how does cocaine interact? I want to see if I can find I want to go through the mechanism where how cocaine could possibly injure the hippocampus. And with the cocaine use, particularly with crack cocaine, the more potent form can cause overexcitability in these neurons. And I'm sure it's because it's hitting the glutamate receptor, causing those postsynaptic neurons to become hyperactive, overexcitable, and they start to pop. Let me see if that's the way I understand it. Let me see if it does it that way. Cocaine profoundly alters the hippocampus in a brain region critical for memory, learning, and emotional regulation. Memory, learning, emotional regulation, resulting in reduced neurogenesis, impaired synaptic plasticity, and altered connectivity. These changes are central to intense cravings and relapse associated with addiction. if you want to get a deep dive into cocaine and the impact it has, I have a video on cocaine. I did a talk on cocaine and the impact. I think I did an impact on the mesolimbic system, but not on the cocaine's impact on the hippocampus. Um, Now, cocaine use is associated with decreased hippocampus functioning, and therefore, so when the patients come in the morning, you sort of want to let them sleep for their first day because they're not able to really engage or provide all of this history because they have difficulty remembering things, they have difficulty bringing things up. They're exhausted. It takes too much energy for them during cocaine withdrawals to sort of come up with the response. And so usually I touch bases with them and let them sleep the first 24 hours so they can get their energy levels back up. But during that time, if I were to test their memory function, they'll do bad. So I have to wait till they're out of the detox phase of cocaine to actually test their memory. Because I don't want to report that, because I need to see the impact of the hippocampus, but I don't want to see that it's impaired functionality during the withdrawal phase. So here, impaired neurogenesis. All right, the neurogenesis is the creation of new neurons, right? Cocaine significantly impairs this process, leading to a host of cognitive issues, reduced cell proliferation, worsening memory and learning, increased addiction vulnerability, and then altered synaptic plasticity, enhanced drug-related memories, using you get that sort of like the what is that? Pavlov's dogs, the positive reinforcement, that using these substances at a particular location around particular field people, when you use the substance and it causes an increase in dopamine and you get the euphoria and intoxication, somehow your memory is connected to the people and the actual location, right? So your brain remembers the patient, the people, and the place equals a good time, right? So when the patients go sober and they start to feel depressed, tired, exhausted, and withdrawn, they have difficulties with their memory, even if they were to go back to the places where they use, they can start feeling better through this process. And it'll cause an increase in dopamine, and just being exposed back to the places and the people they were used could cause them an increase in that dopamine, and they get a sensation of feeling home or feeling comfortable and things like that. And this is not where you want to be at home. If you are committed to sobriety, then when you go back around people and places and your body makes you feel that that's home, when really these are the people and these are the places that are actually damaging you, it's very difficult to break that. And then when you go get some help, your ego withdraw those energies from you, and you usually depressed, down, tired, fatigued, exhausted, no interest, no motivation. It's very difficult for these patients. And so their ego functioning may set them up for relapse when they get exposed to people and places that they haven't been around for a while. And so you want to make sure you prepare your patients for that. That, hey, you can't go around those people, you can't go around those places. And when it makes you feel really good, that's just your illness trying to lure you in again. But don't believe it. It's not there. This illness is not your friend, and this illness does not care about you. This illness wants to thrive. Cocaine disrupts synaptic plasticity. Great. Okay. Enhanced drug-related memories, suppress normal learning. The enhanced consolidation of drug memories can come from the cost of healthy learning. At the cost of healthy learning. Epigenetic changes. Chronic cocaine use alters the expression of genes in the hippocampus via epigenetic changes, which are required for forming cocaine-related memories. I didn't know it was the epigenetic changes that form. That makes sense. That's why they're stable over time. That's why you don't supposedly go back, right? The functional, so this was Okay, so first, impaired neurogenesis. Okay, this is altered synaptic plasticity. So memory, suppressed learning, and then epigenetic changes that produce the chronic changes. Functional and structural change. Cocaine alters the function and structure of the hippocampus and its connection to other brain areas, which may explain the cognitive and emotional affects seen in addiction. So altered connectivity. Yep. Blood-brain barrier disruption. Cocaine use increases the permeability of the blood-brain barrier. Oh, whoa. This is the mechanism. Wow, that's the mechanism. So increase. So I didn't. Wow. So cocaine increases the permeability of the blood-brain barrier, specifically in the hippocampus. The inflammation, the porosity of the blood-brain barrier opens, and all the content in the serum basically gets into the cerebral spinal fluid through that hippocampus, and that's one of the reasons why that failure leads to hospitalization because they can't get anything in their brain. And then when their prefrontal cortex takes the information it doesn't have, it it only uses the information it has to render the world. And when that person renders the world, it's going to be completely different than the person whose hippocampus inputted all the information about the environment. These are two different perceptions. And it's important to understand that I think I need to make a flyer for my patients to sort of give them, hey, this is the mechanism. Okay, potential for vascular damage. Yeah, in rare cases, it can cause acute bilateral hippocampal ischemia, right? Because of the vasoconstricting properties of cocaine, resulting in severe amnesia and other cognitive infections. The role of inflammation. Yeah, cocaine induces a pro-inflammatory state that persists in the brain users. In the hippocampus, this inflammatory response, including gliosis, damages neurons and contributes to cognitive effects. Wow! So the mechanism is this. It induces a pro-inflammatory state. Okay, impact on learning and craving, intense cravings, right? Strong, persistent associations of environmental clues. Wow, the environment and the people continue to. That's why you got to get away from the people you're around and the places you're around. You have to change your environment and the people. With rewarding effects of cocaine, which is driven by altered hippocampal plasticity, is a major factor in craving and relapse. So it's the hippocampal plasticity. Cognitive deficits. The reduction in the new neurons and disrupted synaptic function leads to impairment in working memory, declarative memory, and executive functioning. This is exactly what we pick up when we do the memory test. So we use the HVLT, the HTVL. What is this called? I can never get it right. Um, so I use the, let's see here. What is this test called? HVLT-R1. HVLT-R. So for a memory test, I use a 15 item memory test. Let me go. If we want to screen, we can screen using let's say, full steam mental mini status examination. There are other examinations that you can use also. In that mini mental status examination, you have a item that tests memory, and they use 3 items. They say like pen, cup, and ball, and you ask them to remember those things. The pen, cup, and ball, I think that was good for the 80s. Right now, I use the HVLT. Yep. All right, let me see this. Okay, Hopkins verbal learning test. Okay, let me just review this real quick. And so I administer this test at the bedside to see how well their memory is functioning. Okay, this is just the assess your Alzheimer's and look, amnestic disorder population. So the patient comes in, what's going on? I don't remember. I don't remember. Um, okay, so let me try to give you some information here at age 16 to 99. Okay, look, 5 to 10 minutes, 2 minutes to score. Um, Let me see if they have any other items here. Okay, let me just see how. Okay, let me see this. If I have anything here, I want to try and give you some more information about this test because if I use this is very helpful in me examining. See, you the test is examining 15 items. You give the patient the list of 15 items, and then they repeat it, and you mark down exactly how many they got, and you do it a total of 4 times. So the whole test takes around 25 to 30 minutes to administer, and you want to have them test 4 different times. So here's the 12 items. Give me as many as you can. Here's the second attempt. Give me as many as you can. Here's the third attempt. Give me as many as you can. And then wait 15 minutes and then ask them again exactly how many they remember. And then from there, you can sort of get a good idea of where they're at in terms of their hippocampus functioning. I can't get to that, but and then when I get a chance, I'll go ahead and see about um, um, I'm gonna see about giving you more information about that. But let me do this. I'm going to copy this, and let me just go to the AI because I want the AI to sort of explain the purpose of the test, so you'll know how to um, explain. Let me see let me see what it does there. Okay, the Hopkins verbal learning test assesses verbal learning and memory in adults. Verbal learning, right, and memory in adults, providing a brief evaluation of the person's ability to recall and recognize a list of words. It measures immediate recall, delayed recall, and recognition, and is commonly used with individuals who have brain-related disorders such as Alzheimer's or an amnestic disorder to monitor memory function. Now, this is very important because I get this as soon as they come in when they're able to take the test, and then over time, years after years, then you have this record of their memory functioning. If you keep track of hospitalization, keep track of drug use and drug rehab facilities, you may be able to map many of those things out to sort of show the relationship between drug use and hippocampal dysfunction. So here it attests verbal learning and memory. The primary goal is to evaluate how effectively a person can learn, retain information, and recall verbal information. Diagnosis and monitor brain disease. Now, this is how I get my diagnosis of a dementia, right? So a patient in their 30s or 40s, vulnerabilities to cocaine, damage to hippocampus, hippocampal damage, they can score. The challenge that we're having is some of our patients with a history of cocaine dependency issues may have a level of cognitive functioning that's actually as severe as a person diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia. And how is this person going to function? So in the inpatient section during the detox, we have to make sure we focus on that neuropsychiatric aspect of that hippocampus dysfunction, because we need to get the hippocampus functioning again, because they need to learn. We need to get information, help them get information into their brains. So we refer the patients to a 28-day inpatient substance abuse treatment program so they can go on the inpatient setting and receive treatment in their supervised, structured environment. And hopefully the structure will prevent them from checking out the hospital, will prevent them from seeking drugs and doing things like that. So that support for the inpatient setting is one of the environments that help prevent them from going back to where they came from. Remember, victims of trauma typically run back to their abusers, right? Because there is nothing else out here in this externalized world anymore, because there's no memory to record it. So everything in the face of abuse, seeking out for help is like non-existent because the memory isn't there, and therefore the reality isn't there. The only reality is to go back to the abuser because that's where all the good times and the memories were. And that's why they create those memories through fake stuff like mimicry and through like love bombing and things like that. They have to try to create those memories for you to reflect on, to come back to. So so I think that's all I'm going to do right now. That's all I'm going to talk about right now in terms of the hippocampus. And I'm at 35 minutes, so I didn't want to go too far in this. I want to try and keep it close to 2 minutes. So let's go ahead and see here. Hey guys, Max, how's it going? Max, hey Sabata, hey guys, iHash, Dr. Liv, hey guys. My most hardened supporters. Great. iHash, how's it going, buddy? How does the hippocampus decide whether an experience feels new or familiar? And is this where deja vu comes from? New and familiar. Yeah, I think that, see, your hippocampus encodes the information. This is a bottle. It's not an experience, it's a bottle. It's going to record that this is a plastic bottle, not that it was a refreshing drink. Well, the experience part it would, but this is the declarative part. So here, but the deja vu will be coming from your memory. I think it'll be coming from a different section. It may be coming more from long-term memory. So I think there's a different process there. Okay. Hey, Dr. Bashir, how's it going? How do antidepressants and antipsychotics affect hippocampal plasticity and memory formation? I think it has, it has those serotonergic receptors, so you can increase serotonergic activity in that pathway. Some of the receptors also have alpha adrenergic receptors that will block alpha adrenergic. I'm not sure if the hippocampus have alpha adrenergic receptors there, but you want to use the antidepressants to target the receptors to try to influence that. But the increased serotonin, increased norepinephrine, and decreased glutamate is associated with better hippocampus function and memory. Okay, let's see here. Hey, LL, how's it going? How do you differentiate PCP and cocaine? Remember, PCP was that molecule that attached directly to glutamate, right? It specifically a specific type of a glutamate receptor called NMDA. So, and the PCP is very dangerous because I think it's direct activation of that glutamate, and that glutamate excitivity leads to the inflammation and then the same process of cell death. So that's with PCP. Okay, so the target for PCP is different. Now, cocaine, as you can see, the cocaine primarily causes the release of dopamine from that presynaptic receptor, things like that, and the excess of that plume of dopamine that comes out, it goes across the synaptic cleft, and it starts to activate hit all these receptors and activating the postsynaptic receptor. The target for cocaine is in the mesolimbic system, and that mesolimbic pathway, when it's hyperactive, that creates the symptoms of intoxication from cocaine. The whole hyperdopaminergic response, and as you can see from the lecture today, that it causes a pro-inflammatory state. It results in the opening of the blood-brain barrier, and then the content gets into, from the serum, gets into the cerebrospinal fluid, and that debris interferes with the functioning of the cell. And so of the brain cell, and now you get dysfunction of the network. So the mechanism of PCP, direct activation of NMDA, direct activation of glutamate. It may not be. I got to get the NMDA part. That may be methamphetamine. That may be ecstasy. But cocaine release a presynaptic dopamine, so the mechanisms are slightly different. Okay. Hi, Alan. How's it going? Thank you for the question, buddy. If a patient has stopped using cocaine for an extended period of time, will those emotional connections to people and locations still remain? They refer to that under the epigenetic category. And epigenetics is when you get post-Lange translational modification of proteins. And so if you look at a protein and you see all of this stuff, you can say, hey, all of these amino acids and this whole protein was made by the cell body, right? And then you say, oh, well, hold on a second. There's something else there that was added after the protein was made. Now, the things that were added, like sometimes phosphate groups or methylate things. Now, this extra phosphate that's there on this molecule, it wasn't encoded by the cell. How did it get there? It got there through this extra epigenetics, that post-Lange translational modification. But those epigenetic changes are not transmitted through mitosis, and so they're not gametes, and so it's not going to be inherited to the person's offsprings. These are changes that were made at the genetic, at the DNA, at the protein level after the protein was created. This post-translational modification is thought to be permanent, right? And so the patients will likely have these vulnerabilities to those substances, the places, the people all the time. That's why the most effective treatment is no contact, is to simply get away from it and never go back to it again. Great. So let me look at this next question. Hey, LL, how's it going? Thanks for your question. I appreciate the previous questions too. In terms of PA, PCP, and cocaine, PA. Okay, how would I know who is taking what? Okay, the PCP user is nude on top of the car yelling at you at the top of your head. And you don't feel threatened. You feel like, oh my God, is he or she going to be okay? Right? Police come and they run down the street, top speed. Nobody can catch them. Glutamate, right? Glutamate. And then all that excitation at the level of PCP causes that brain barrier disruption. And then with the inflammation, everything else comes in with it. Now with cocaine, so the goal there is to make the mesolimbic system hyperactive, so they can titrate things with the cocaine that they may not be able to titrate with, to titrate the high with PCP. Now, I've never used these substances, so I'm always talking as an observer and stuff like that. So the personal experience with this is completely different from what I'm observing. I think someone who actually used the substances probably would be a better person to describe these experiences. But the PCP is much more unpredictable and unpredictable than cocaine users. They're usually more laid back and more very pleasant to deal with, usually very cooperative and things like that. They participate in the treatment very well. They usually don't cause, I usually never really see the patients with substance abuse, with cocaine dependency cause any issues. They're usually very cooperative. Okay, let's see here. Hey, how's it going, Laron? Okay, sounds good, buddy. How's it going? Okay. Hey, how's it going? Okay, this is Alim. Okay, wow, that's really interesting and unfortunate for the patient. Thank you for the answer. Thank you. Same. Oh, okay. The physical, I could think that the physical, why don't you, if you want to write more about that, just give me write a little bit more about that. If there's an explanation, if you have an explanation how the physical appearance in PCP is different from cocaine, that's reliable, that's evidence-based, that's not subjective, just go ahead and write it down and I'll go ahead and show everybody. All right. Okay, other than that, I think that's all. I didn't want to go 44 minutes on the hippocampus. Oh, geez. Okay, so let me go ahead. Let me get out of here for now. I think I've been here for too long. I only meant to go for like 20 minutes. Um, okay, so I appreciate everything. And if you any other questions or anything like that, you can please leave it in the comments section and I'll see if I can get to it. Most likely I won't have time to it, but I'll look at it if I can. Thank you so much, guys. And you take care. Read out. Ciao.